Welcome back to the Middle of Culture. I'm one of your hosts, Peter.
And I'm your other host, Eden.
And we are back with what we started calling the Summer of X. It has now turned into the Fall of X. And I don't know what it's like where you are, Eden, but here there's a whole lot of snow. So it's starting to feel like the dark winter of X as well.
Oh, yeah. Today is the scary shift day that you sometimes get here in the Midwest, where it was 80 degrees at 10 a.m. this morning.
Oh, my.
And it will be 20 when I wake up to take the dogs out tomorrow morning.
Oh, that's brutal.
And you watched it go across the state. Like, I have my little like weather app in the corner of my Windows install, and I just watched the temperature tick down all day. Just tick, 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 tick. And you're like, it is 3 p.m. It should not be getting colder than it was at 2 p.m. And yet, here we are. It's weird. It's weird when it's that final change.
Yeah. Well, you know, we had a brief period of kind of nice fall here, and then it just decided to start snowing the other day, and has just been kind of snowing. And it's not terrible today, but it's fairly cool. I mean, I guess right now my little thing says that it is 24 degrees outside. I don't know how accurate that is, but, it's definitely feeling like winter, and I'm not ready for it to feel like winter. I was hoping for at least a little bit more.
That's fair. We had a pretty good run of fall time, which was nice. I don't know that I've mentioned it to you either on or off the mic, but the Iowa Department of Natural Resources sells bare root plants in the fall and the spring.
Okay.
And so for extremely economical prices.
Uh-huh.
So we bought 50 bushes that showed up last week.
Oh, my.
Bare root. Yes. And we ended up planting between 35 and 40 of those this weekend.
That is a lot of planting.
It is. And thankfully, they're not big. They're like a foot tall, most of them. They were bare root, so we didn't have to dig 4-foot wide holes because of the already existing soil pot in the pot. But it was still 40 holes we had to dig this weekend to plant these things. But it was really exciting. We did they sell almost all either native or a few just like things that really thrive here without being invasive. But we bought 25 aronia bushes and 25 button bushes.
Nice.
So we planted, like I said, we planted 35 or 40. The aronia will give us some really nice berries. It's called chokeberry also, if you're familiar with chokeberry.
Yep.
So after they mature for 3 years, they'll start giving us a fair amount of berries while also being like nice big shady bushes. And then the button bushes just have really pretty flowers on them. So we planted those out in the sunnier areas because they need a lot of sun. And then the aronia are in some partly sunny areas kind of behind our garage. And we're just really excited about them. It was a lot of work, but we're excited to have, a bunch of new plants. And if it goes well, and I think it will, we'll probably end up buying a bunch of trees next spring or fall and planting some more trees all over our property. We got a lot of land, and we're tired of mowing it. So
That's fair.
we have a half acre, and I do not have a riding mower. So
that's a lot.
It takes about 3.5 hours if you try to mow the whole lawn.
Yeah, no, that's a little too. That's a long time.
Needless to say, we hire a neighborhood kid to do the outside of our fence at an exorbitant rate, but better than having to do it ourselves. And then this last year, for the past couple years, Cassie, my partner, has mowed a path into the backyard where she can just kind of stroll. And so she'll often go out with the dogs and just leisurely walk along the path. And so the path is it's shape has ebbed and flowed a little bit. What we really have kind of settled on a shape of the path at this point. So a lot of these bushes in the backyard are going to help kind of define the path a little more clearly. And also, we just stopped mowing a lot of the rest of the yard that wasn't in the path because it was in the backyard, and we were like, if someone complains to the city, we'll mow it, and if not, oh well. So there are entire portions of our lawn that never got mowed this year, and that feels so powerful to say, screw you, the city, with your draconian rules. Screw grass. Grass is terrible. It's one of the worst plants on the planet. I hate it. Why we are trying to make our yards look like 17th century France, I will never understand. Kill all the grass and plant some other stuff. That's what I feel about it.
There you go. Well, anything you've been checking out lately that you wanted to mention on the pod before we jump into our discussion of this X-Men movie?
Yeah. I mentioned last time that I had been playing Persona 5. I beat it.
Excellent.
I am replaying it because I didn't see the vast majority of the expansion content, because Persona Royal is one of those games where you make a lot of connections with people and you need to keep visiting those people to make your connection with them stronger. You know, lots of RPGs do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mass Effect does that. You got to go talk with your crewmates and become friends with them so that you can have your cute romance with Liara. How else are you going to kiss her? But anyway, there's a lot of people you got to go talk to in Persona 5. And one of them in particular, you have to get to a rank 10. You have to get them fully ranked out, maxed out, if you want to see basically the entire third semester of the game.
Oh, wow.
And I hated this person. So every time it was like, do you want to go talk to this person? I'd be like, no, he's the worst. So I did not see the entire third semester. But what that means is that I essentially saw the ending, the original ending of the original game. So that felt, it was climactic. It was fun. It was big. It was everything. I killed God. It's a JRPG. This is not a spoiler. I killed God. You kill God in nearly every JRPG. It's the way JRPGs are designed. It's great. Through friendship, you find and murder God. It's beautiful. Love it. Did that. It was great. But then I was like, how come I never saw any of the... I thought there was supposed to be a third semester. So then I did some reading and I found out what had happened. And that's when I realized, oh, this is what New Game Plus is for. Because a lot of your stats and stuff carry over, like your personal stats. So I'm maxed out on everything. My knowledge, my charm, my guts, all that stuff maxed out. So I never have to study. I never have to, read books to get charm. I'm maxed. So all I can do on this second playthrough, hang out. I'm just hanging out with everyone. It's just constant vibes and killing shadows in the combat part. It's great. I'm having a great time.
Well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it and are having fun going through it a second time.
I mean, legit, I think Persona 5 cracked my top 10 goats.
Wow.
I think it's in my top 10 best games of all time. It was really good.
I've heard a lot of people who really, really feel strongly about it. So
I did not expect to feel that way about it, but I really, really liked it. And I'm eager to play more games by this publisher and developer. So Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster in the mail right now. We'll be here on Saturday. Very excited.
Nice. Anything
How
else?
about yourself?
No.
I mean, Andor is still good every week. Can't wait for you to watch it so we can talk about it.
Oh, I need to get on that. No, honestly, not much for me.
I know that we've both been busy with the thing we'll talk about in the next episode. So.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say is a fair bit of my time has gone to that. I haven't been playing anything lately, in terms of watching. Now that we finished up She-Hulk, I finished up Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power finally. We're just kind of, it's Lego Masters and British Bake Off on Sunday night, which are like I've said before, my Zen TV shows to help stave off the existential dread of going back to work on Monday morning. But I have been listening to some music, and there have been a few things that have stood out. One in particular that has really been, it's really been a jam lately for me. I've really gotten into it, is a band called the Otolith. Now, anybody who may be listening, yes, Otolith, I guess I could say Otolith, Otolith, like the little stones that are in our inner ears to help us with our balance. But the album, so the Otolith rose out of the ashes of the band Sub Rosa. Have you ever heard of Sub Rosa, Eden?
I feel like I've listened to them before. That name is extremely familiar to me.
So Sub Rosa was a sort of, I refer to them as post-doom, kind of a post-doom band out of actually Salt Lake City. And it was post-doom with some strings and some female vocals, and is very much about the atmosphere, as so much of the music that I would characterize in the post-something category. You know, it's in this case, it's doom, but it's doom with a real heavy focus on the atmosphere. And the Otolith sort of rose out of those ashes and released a new album a few weeks ago, and it is absolutely divine. It is fantastic. It is heavy, it is moody, it is quiet, it is introspective. There's some great, lovely, female vocals. There's some really great growls and screams, and through it all weaves just these lovely, I think it's a violin and a viola in addition to the heavy stuff. And so that's probably been the one thing that has that has most dominated my listening lately, and is I think the thing, if I was to recommend anything, I'd say, hey, if you like music in general, doesn't need to be doom because it's varied enough, go check out the Otolith. I think that a lot of people who may not necessarily think of themselves as fans of metal could find some really interesting things to like about this album and this band. So that's probably about it.
Very cool. I stumbled onto some music in the last week or so that I've been listening to a lot of, which is an album by an artist named Daniel Rosen or Rosen. I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name. He is one of the instrumentalists from the band Grizzly Bear, which is kind of a weird experimental, an experimental alternative sort of. It's kind of folksy, but not really folksy. I don't know how to describe him. Okay. But anyway, he put out his first solo album this year. It's called You Belong There, and the vibes are just immaculate. It's just a very cool album. Lots of acoustic guitar and multi-layered vocals and really kind of poignant songwriting and just has really good vibes. So really highly recommended if you want something a little lighter, and just really just kind of a good fall music. That's how I would describe You Belong There. It's good fall music.
Excellent. Very cool. Well, let's go ahead and let's move on to the topic of the day, something that I think we're both looking forward to talking about and finding out what our thoughts were. But then in our rewatch of the X-Men saga, we have made it all the way to X-Men Days of Future Past. Now, I know that Days of Future Past was a pretty significant story arc in the X-Men comics, but beyond that, I know nothing about it. So I don't know if this is taking from that at all, if it is related, if it is a riff on that or what. So I can't answer that. You probably could, because you are definitely the one with the comics knowledge between the two of us. But a couple things about this before we get into kind of a quick summary and then really just focus on what were our thoughts, what did we think about this. In looking at Rotten Tomatoes, it would appear to me that by a reasonable margin, this is the highest ranked X-Men movie On Rotten Tomatoes, I think leaving out, I don't think that's true. I think Logan might be higher. But in terms of ones that, kind of are in this main, most of the characters, this one is ranking pretty doggone high. Yep. Logan beats it by 4% at 94. But X-Men Days of Future Past is sitting at a solid 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, which puts it ahead of X-Men First Class, puts it ahead of X-Men, puts it ahead of X2, and really kind of, from a critical standpoint, puts it up in sort of the upper echelons of the X-Men movies. I'm going to go through a really fast, as fast as I can, plot summary. So if you haven't seen this movie from 2014 by now, I guess you may want to stop and go watch it and then come back. But anyway, we're going to spoil.
y'all know the gimmick at this point. You're going to hear all the deets.
That's exactly right. Now, before I go into the summary, though, I wanted to make sure that I clarified. Which version of X-Men Days of Future Past did you watch, Eden?
I watched the one streaming on Disney Plus, which is not the Rogue cut because Rogue was in it for all of 1 to maybe 2 seconds, even though she had higher billing than Elliot Page. What the hell, movie?
That's what I thought. I thought that we had discussed that you were going to watch whatever was on Disney Plus, which we assumed was probably the theatrical release. And then I actually went ahead and watched the Rogue cut. So we'll be able to talk about whatever differences there are between there. But this is, and one of the things that Days of Future Past, at least to me, felt like it was trying to do is it's trying to really sort of unify our two segments of X-Men movies. We've got the original X-Men movies that kind of, include the Wolverine and X-Men Origins, but culminated in The Last Stand with the, Logan killing Jean Grey and all that. And then you've got, X-Men First Class, which was kind of like this new group. And this is kind of bringing these two together. So it starts off and we've got this dystopian future. Everything's destroyed. It's dark. These Sentinels, these, robotic creations have been programmed to hunt down mutants and any humans who help them. There is a group in Moscow of X-Men survivors, including Kitty Pryde, Colossus, Blink, Warpath, Bishop, Iceman, and Sunspot. Basically, a bunch of them are sacrificing themselves as Kitty is sending Bishop's consciousness back in time to warn them to get out. And so all of a sudden, as everything is going to heck, I don't know why I just said heck, whatever. As everything is just like everybody's dying, the Sentinels are destroying them, all of a sudden, poof, all the damage goes away. The place where they are is empty and they're gone. They retreat to a Chinese temple and all of a sudden up shows the classic, X-Men ship, plane, whatever it is. And out comes Storm, Wolverine, Professor X, and Magneto. Professor X explains about the Sentinels who were designed by Bolivar Trask, a military scientist who Raven, a.k.a. Mystique, had assassinated in 1973. In response to her assassinating Bolivar Trask, the government had captured Raven, experimented on her, and used her DNA and her ability to sort of shape-shift and change appearance, things like that. Used that to build the Sentinels, which then created Sentinels that could adapt to nearly every mutant power. So the plan is that, Kitty Pryde and Bishop have been using this ability where she can send his consciousness back in time a few days to warn them. And Professor X says, well, we need to prevent Trask's assassination using the same technique and change the future. Kitty Pryde says, nobody can go back that far. It will destroy your mind. And of course, what happens, Wolverine says, well, what if you could heal just as fast as this is destroying your mind? I'm cool, send me. So Logan gets transported back, his consciousness, to 1973. He goes to the X-Mansion, finds out from Hank McCoy, a.k.a. Beast, that the school's been closed for years. Many of the students were drafted in the Vietnam War, and Magneto has been arrested for assassinating John F. Kennedy, who we later find from Magneto that he's a mutant as well. A young, broken Xavier who has been shot has turned to alcoholism and is using this weird serum, which again we'll talk about because it doesn't make sense to me, that makes it so he can walk. So it heals his spine, but it turns off all of his telepathic abilities. Xavier agrees to help Wolverine. They go and they get Peter Maximoff. They bust Eric, a.k.a. Magneto, out of the Pentagon prison that he is in. Raven finds out that Trask has been experimenting on mutants, and this is what leads her to want to assassinate him at the Paris Peace Accords. Xavier, Beast, and Logan kind of foil her attempt, but all of a sudden here comes Magneto, and he tries to kill Raven, thinking that this will prevent the Sentinels from ever coming into existence. Hank McCoy fights him. It allows Raven to escape, but it exposes all of them as mutants, and in the process, Raven gets shot in the leg. Trask takes advantage of this and uses this to convince President Nixon to initiate the Sentinel program. Eric manages to go and get his psychic blocking helmet out of military custody, uses that to take control of Trask's Sentinel prototypes by infusing them with metal, because they weren't made with any metal, they were made with a space-age polymer. That's the term the movie uses. Going back to the X-Mansion, Professor X abandons the serum, regains his mutant powers, and communicates with his future self, who kind of inspires him to listen to Logan, to really become the man that he needs to be. And then they use Cerebro to find Mystique. They go to Washington, D.C. in an attempt to stop Raven's plan to assassinate Trask yet again. There's a big ceremony in front of the White House. President Nixon unveils the Sentinels. They're searching for a disguised Raven. Magneto appears. He's controlling the Sentinels, and he has picked up the Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium and has used it and carried it through Washington, D.C., and dropped it around the White House to kind of barricade everybody in. In the midst of all this, Magneto impales Logan with a whole bunch of rebar, throws him into the Potomac River, which starts to cause problems because now he's stuck in the past but in the future, and yada yada. Nixon and Trask and a disguised Mystique or Raven, they go into the White House bunker, which Magneto then rips open, and is ready to basically kind of to kill them. We flash forward to the future. All of a sudden, a bunch of Sentinels manage to track down where they are. They start attacking them. They're trying to buy more time. Magneto's seriously injured. Finally, Raven, she openly shows herself as a mutant, subdues Magneto with a plastic gun, which ends up saving Nixon in his cabinet. She's about ready to kill Trask, but Xavier is able to talk to her and kind of convinces her to spare him. And so now there's a mutant who is publicly seen saving the president, and so the entire Sentinel program is decommissioned. And eventually Bolivar Trask gets thrown in prison for trying to sell military secrets to foreign military officials. Bam! Wolverine now wakes up at the school in the, what we can assume, I guess, is present/future, and he sees everybody who was dead. They're all now back, and everybody's happy and hunky-dory, including Jean Grey. And, it's obvious that Logan's, his present is way different than the body he woke up in. So he talks to Xavier, who says he's going to fill him in on everything that's happened from 1973 to then. And then we flash back to 1973, where Logan's being fished out of the Potomac by Raven, who is disguised as Major William Stryker. And then there's a post-credit scene that sets up the next one, which is dumb because it's not even setting up what the next one was really. It was just thrown in there so that they could do something. So, there's the plot summary. Eden, tell me what your thoughts were about X-Men Days of Future Past.
This movie kind of slapped.
Okay.
This movie maybe deserved the reputation that it had as one of the best X-Men movies, which I was surprised by. I expected it to be bad, but here's the thing. All of the actors from the First Class timeline are better, except for Fassbender. I liked Fassbender better in First Class. Everyone else, though, better in this one.
Yeah?
J-Law, better. Holt, better. What's his face guy who plays Professor X? Can't think of his name right now.
James McAvoy.
Better. James McAvoy. All better. The special effects, especially the costuming effects, much better. Mystique looked much better. Beast looked more like Beast this time.
Definitely. It looked more, and I don't know if it was more practical effects this time around or if it was just better CGI, but it definitely looked more real. It looked more practical, like actual hair/fur instead of, painted on
bad
digital
CG.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not perfect. I still don't know. I still think that it's not as good as X-Men and X2, but I think that this has moved into a good close third to those.
Okay.
What did you think?
I think that this is probably, so far, the most well-made of the X-Men movies that we have watched.
Oh, yeah.
And I intensely disliked watching this movie.
Okay, let's go.
And so I'm looking forward to talking to see if I can figure out why I have and always have had such a viscerally negative reaction to this movie. Because I remembered when I was getting ready to watch it, and as we'd been building up to this, I remember thinking, man, the last time I watched Days of Future Past, years ago, because I didn't watch it. I think I saw it when it first came out. And then when the Rogue Cut came out in 2015, I got that on iTunes. I watched it then and never wanted to watch this movie again. And so I remember thinking back going, okay, why? What was going on here? Why do I not want to watch this movie so bad? And it was done. And again, my youngest and we watched it together, and I turned to him and he was like, wow, that was pretty good. And I said, it's a decent movie that I said I did not like at all. And I do not ever want to watch this movie again. Okay.
I don't know that here's the thing. I said that it was a solid third, and I agree.
And I think that's a very reasonable place to put this movie. I mean,
I still don't know. I don't know that I'll ever watch it again, though.
I don't know that there's any real reason to watch any of these again, honestly. At least the ones we've watched so far.
And maybe that's what this whole project is. It's a benediction to the X-Men as a series and saying goodbye forever, X-Men. I don't ever feel the need to watch these movies ever again.
That's a good way to think.
I will say that there were it made some choices that I would have done different, and if I had been in charge, what I thought of would have been so much better and so much more in character.
Okay, let's hear.
Here's my biggest one. And this is the part where the movie sort of lost me a little bit. So Magneto goes and he infects all of the Sentinels with metal.
Mm-hmm.
Cool scene. And I'm like, what the hell is he doing? Why is he ripping the train tracks up behind the train? That's not going to stop it. And then I realized what he was doing. He was infecting all of the Sentinels with metal, and I was like, okay, I see where you're going.
Because remember, space age polymer.
Then he shows up. He knows Mystique is going to make an attempt on the president's life. And so he picks up the freaking baseball stadium, which is this is stupid. This was stupid.
It's stupid in the same way that in the very first X-Men movie, them diverting the stupid Golden Gate Bridge to get to Alcatraz was stupid too. It was just one of these things.
You mean in X3? That's not in the first one. That was in X3.
Yeah, in X3. It was a similar kind of stupid where it's like, you don't need to do this. This is just dumb.
No. Real dumb. Real dumb. It's just a stupid excuse for why no one else is in that scene. And you could have come up with a better conceit than that. Regardless. What I thought and what I wrote in my notes was, LOL, Magneto is making himself the savior of people. This is effing brilliant. And then he didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
dog, you know she's going to go kill the president. So you show up and you use the Sentinels to look like they're attacking the president to discredit Trask. You save the president's life, and then you create the better future that you wanted the whole time. Eric, I gave you all the... Mr. Policeman, I gave you all the clues. And then he just went full supervillain, and I'm like, dog... Why did you take him and go full supervillain? That was one of the parts I liked about First Class, is that you were like, he's clearly conflicted. He's not full supervillain. And then it's like, well, let's make him full supervillain. Even after being like, oh, no, I was trying to stop the assassination of JFK. And I was like, okay, he's not me. They're building off of that characterization they gave Magneto in First Class, where he's less of a villain, not even just a sympathetic villain, which is what we got in McKellen's portrayal of him so often, but like a conflicted anti-hero, and then he had to go full stupid-ass supervillain at the end, and Mystique got to be the hero, and I was like, okay, so what you're telling me is J-Law had a better agent for this movie.
That's probably accurate. No, you're so right.
Because there's literally no reason why Mystique should be the savior mutant, because she's A, the worst, B, it doesn't make as much sense.
No.
Magneto should have done it. Magneto would have done it if Fassbender had a better agent. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, and you bring up a really interesting point, because, and I think, and again, this is why I wanted to talk about this, to understand some of my negativity towards this movie. And that's one of the key points is, we see, I think that for the most part, Fassbender plays Magneto very well. Like, I like him.
Oh, he's just as
charismatic
as he was in the last movie.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
He's just full supervillain, and I don't like that.
But the problem is that it conflicts too much. We've got him. I mean, even kind of this not full supervillain, but it still is kind of. It feels a little out of character to me when he decides he's going to kill Raven at the Paris Peace Accords to stop the whole thing. Like, the whole time, there's just these decisions where you go, this isn't jiving with who you told us you were in the previous film, but furthermore, doesn't seem to jive with the bits of Magneto that we get in the future, played by Ian McKellen, who is now there with Xavier, helping fight off the Sentinels, and ultimately,
part of the team,
as far as we know, potentially sacrifices himself to give them more time to try and reverse this future. And so it's such a bizarre, just a few character choices they made with Magneto that make you go, did you guys even really know the character you were writing here? Or did you just get to a point where you're like, well, and now we need a big bad. So here we're going to make Magneto because he's the antagonist. And we got to set him up so he'll be the antagonist down the road again. And it was disappointing because they had, as you pointed out, a much more interesting conclusion to this that could have still led to the Sentinel program going away and this whole bright and happy future that we see, but in a way that I think was more true to the characters, and especially more true to the characters who matter. There is no question in my mind that, like you said, because Jennifer Lawrence was pretty, she was hitting while the skillet was hot back there in the mid 2010s, and her agent got her in there as she's the biggest star. She's going to be who we're hinging these movies off of. And that was such a wrong choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. Well, and here's the thing. It's like the flash forward back to the present of the film at the end. Everyone's alive. Yeehaw. Great. Stupid.
I hated that so bad.
Why did you give Cyclops the worst sunglasses on God's green earth? What have you done?
everything about that just did not work for me.
B, everyone's back. But here's the thing is, you could have made a better, more interesting status quo. Because what if they had done what I said? Magneto is the hero. And then Wolverine goes back to the future, and Magneto is co-running the school with Professor X. And things are different, and the world is more like techno-futuristic, and like they could have blown up the status quo in a so much more interesting way, but they just didn't do it.
No, they didn't. And
I see why they did what they did. I get it. I understand why Jean Grey's alive again. I get why Cyclops is alive again. This is Singer coming back to his series that he did the first 2 movies of, and taking the fattest shit he can on X3. Just like popping down and taking the biggest dookie he can on everything X3 did. That's what he's ultimately doing with the end of this movie.
It was in that regard, it reminded me a lot of The Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi, where it felt like, you've got, oh gosh, what's his face now? Why can I not remember who directed The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker?
Abrams, J.J. Abrams.
J.J. Abrams
Criminal
coming back
J.J. Abrams.
to, same thing, just like drop trow and dookie all over everything that was set up in The Last Jedi. And yeah, it really did. It was like, no, I'm going to undo all of this, which I don't know. It felt like too much. We have this conflict, and pretty significant conflict. And you look at what happened, you go back to 1973, and you look at what some of these mutants have done. And again, you kind of have to go, on the one hand, I kind of see where like Trask is coming from. And these guys, they're like, this is freaking terrifying. Like, we've got this dude who picks up a baseball stadium and floats it and drops it around the White House. We've got to have an answer to this, because all he's got to do is, somebody just needs to take a piss in his Cheerios and he's going to go on a rampage. And so you've got all of this where I look at it and go, again, the way they portray some of these mutants, you're like, they're kind of not wrong. Like, they would be pretty dangerous to have around.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did write down one thing that I got to say, because I need to see if this, I can't remember if this is going to tickle a memory in your mind or if you're too young. But when Logan pulls up to the X Mansion, did you see what car he was driving?
I noticed it, but I don't remember now.
It was a glorious black Buick Riviera.
Oh.
Now, our mother's mother had this blue, just gloriously blue Buick Riviera. That
I remember the Riviera.
Was a work of art.
So much space.
Oh,
so beautiful.
And those big long doors. I remember thinking when I was younger, man, if one of those doors, if you were parked on a hill and one of those doors tried to close on your leg, that's it. Say adios to that leg, because it's gone. It's dead.
It's game over.
Anyway, I wrote down the Buick Riviera rules when he pulls up in front of the X Mansion, because it was a beautiful, beautiful car.
Here's the thing. Cars were the best in the 70s. We peaked as a designing species, for cars at least, in the 70s. And that hurts my soul, because the cars should look better in 2022 than they did in 1974, but they do not.
Not really. They really don't.
I just like them long, and I like them big, and I like them navigable on the ocean, apparently. I want them to be the size of a boat.
Glorious old Cadillacs from the 70s as well, man.
I was just thinking of that old golden copper Cadillac that the Holmans had. Our old neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That was one of the greatest cars ever built, and you could fit 9 teenagers in that sucker, even though it was only supposed to fit 5.
Yeah, they made cars differently back then. Well,
okay, so
let's
more
talk
about this movie.
Yeah, let's talk about the movie. What are some other things that worked well for you?
Dinklage is a delight. Dinklage is always a delight. Love when he shows up. Love that they didn't try any shenanigans with the fact that he's a little person.
Yeah. That it's
never
not even
brought up.
Yep.
Never, not a single offhanded joke about his height or anything. It's just, he is a person and he is here. And I appreciate that because Dinklage is a good enough actor that he should just get these roles because he's a good actor. Mm-hmm. And that's how they played it. And that was right.
100%.
It was very good.
Agree.
Blink's portals, loved it.
They were
Blink,
cool. And
Give
the way
me
they
more
used them.
of her.
Yep.
She was, the way that she would use them in those fight scenes was very cool. Some of the coolest fight scenes we've seen in any of these movies so far, because they really played with some of these powers that we haven't really seen before. However, what is Warpath's power?
That was one of my questions. I didn't even know until a little bit later on in the movie. Like, I couldn't figure it out until Kitty says he can sense them coming.
Yeah, I'm going to look him up because I don't know what the slightest thing about what his superpower is. Also, what is Bishop's superpower?
I was going to ask you that. I was hoping you could tell me because I had no idea whatsoever. It
seemed like he was maybe a battery who then turned his battery into gun.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I'm doing a little... Are you looking
Bishop's
up
mutant
Bishop?
ability allows him to absorb all forms of radiant and conductive energy and then release that energy from his body. So yeah, he's a battery. He sucks in power and then he puts it into gun.
Okay.
That's a dumb power.
Well, let's just say that at least in terms of the comics Warpath, he is nothing at all. Like what we saw in the movie, because in this,
I was gonna
he possesses superhuman physical ability in virtually all areas and is 7'2" tall.
I'm looking at that and thinking to myself, why didn't you cast a 7-foot person?
He apparently held his own in a direct fight against the Juggernaut.
The air pressure from one of his claps causes now I understand. I look at the top of this and I see the picture that they have on this Wikipedia thing, and I think to myself, oh, that black and silver motif, that's from when the X-Men had a Wetworks crew that Wolverine was running. Their entire job was like, let's go murder people. So like, why did you bring this guy onto the murder team? Oh, I understand it now. He can also fly?
Yeah.
Has super strong... This guy's cool. This guy's real cool.
Yeah, we definitely got a toned down version of this.
Dang, man. I mean, I guess he had strength to fight the Sentinels with knives, but like, sure did not seem as cool as it seems like in the comics.
Definitely.
Sorry, Boo Boo Stewart.
Let me tell you the differences that I could figure out between the two versions. Okay. So,
please do.
And you'll need to help me know what happens in the, I'm trying to find so I can tell you, there we go. In the movie, at some point when something is happening to, I think, okay, now I remember. It is when they're at the Paris Peace Accords and Logan sees a young Stryker. This causes a pretty significant sort of psychic shift where all of a sudden he starts struggling and he's kind of freaking out. Did that happen in the version you saw?
Yeah.
Okay. And in the midst of that, he slashes Kitty Pryde's side with his claws.
Yes.
So what happens from that? What's the fallout of that happening?
The fallout of that is that Kitty is weakened, and so they're worried she's not going to be able to keep doing it, and everyone is like, no, you just got to keep doing it.
Okay.
And she just keeps doing it and looks worse and worse as the movie goes on because she's slowly bleeding to death.
Okay. In the Rogue Cut, Bobby expresses his concerns that she's not going to be able to sustain this because she is losing blood and she's too weak, and suggests that, hey, we know someone who can absorb powers. And he kind of looks at Magneto and is like she did yours, and could take over and do this for us. And turns out that Rogue is basically being held in the X-Mansion in where Cerebro is, and is being experimented on, because they're also trying to figure out how to now modify the Sentinels to not just adapt to the powers because of Raven's DNA information they got, but they want to use Rogues to figure out if they can also get the Sentinels to absorb the powers of the mutants that they're running into. And so Xavier's like, well, yeah, they're in the X-Mansion. They got it locked down, but haha, that's my place. I know how to get in that they don't know how to go. And so Bobby and Magneto go to the X-Mansion, break in following Xavier's instructions on how to get in through the sewers and all this stuff. They get in, they find Rogue.
How did they have time to go get her?
They flew really, really fast from China back to wherever this was.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Trust me. So they go back, they get her, they grab her, bring her back over now. And again, by the time you think about this, you're like, wow, this has been quite some time that Kitty Pryde's just been sitting here bleeding out still. In the middle of that fight, Bobby is holding off like 4 Sentinels so that Magneto and Rogue can escape, and he gets melted and dies.
Okay.
So Bobby gets killed there.
Okay.
Fast forward, boom, Rogue comes back. She touches Kitty. She steals her power. Kitty then kind of leans over on the side and then just sort of sits there and watches for the rest of the movie and doesn't do anything. And then Rogue takes over doing the hands on the side of the head sort of thing. I'm trying to see what other changes there were.
Well, that sounds like a totally unnecessary change, so I see why they cut that, because that's dumb and pointless.
Quick question. How do the Sentinels find the X-Men in that Chinese temple? Do they just show up, or is there anything?
They just show up.
So that's one other thing in this. As they're flying away from the X-Mansion, a Sentinel lands on the plane. They do some evasive maneuvers, knock it off. But in the meantime, like, its arm, as they're, as parts of the plane are moving to make it fly super duper fast, its arm gets like trapped and ripped off. And so then they land and the arm starts flashing red and like it's sending out a signal telling the others where they are. So that's how they're able to find them.
Well, why wouldn't it?
Why
wouldn't it?
So I think that's the main issues. You do get a final mid-credit scene with Boulevard Trask imprisoned in Magneto's prison. Don't know why they felt that seems in there.
That seems unnecessary.
Yeah, it literally just pans over that same.
He's a normal dude. I mean, I already thought to myself, the conceit of there being a weird metal-free prison in the center of the Pentagon is the dumbest shit.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
I mean, let's be honest. That prison break is dumb. There's no reason. However,
but it is stupid. I will go to the mat for the Quicksilver scene.
The Quicksilver scene is a choice. It's very good.
It ruled in 2014, and it still rules.
It makes Joss Whedon even more of a criminal than he already is.
And why is that? Is it because what the choices he made with Quicksilver in Age of Ultron?
Yes. Yep. Yes. Because the Age of Ultron Quicksilver is such a waste in comparison to the Quicksilver we see here. He's barely in the movie. He's in the movie long enough to be like, oh, I'm a delinquent. I can go really fast. And they're like, do you want to be a delinquent with us? And he's like, sure. And then he shenanigans for 5 minutes, the 5 most delightful minutes of the movie, and then just like disappears.
Yep. Which was great. A shame because he was a great character in that. If I'm remembering correctly. I think if it had been any more, it would have become grating and we'd have been like, didn't need as much Quicksilver it was. I think it was the absolute perfect amount. Yeah, that's probably a good point. If I'm remembering, I don't remember which movie. I feel like there is an upcoming movie where Quicksilver shows up again and they try to recapture the awe of that scene in the Pentagon, and it falls really flat. It feels way too much like a try hard redo sort of thing. But I don't remember. I could be making this up. Because in fact, one thing I did make up that I had to confess to you via text, I thought the reason Wolverine was the one who they sent back was different than what it was. You were right. All it is because he can heal.
I called it.
And I thought, for some reason in my head, I had dreamt up this idea that the reason that they sent him back was because he basically doesn't age. There was no, like his brain, like his body was exactly the same. So it was easier for his brain, his future mind, to settle into his past body because it was exactly the same, basically. So that, I don't know where that idea came from. I have no idea. That was what I thought it was. I was wrong. You 100% called it.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. Apparently, I just having looked it up, it looks like he's in both Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix. I'm gonna guess that if they do a scene like that, it'll be in Apocalypse. That's my educated guess, because it seems like the sort of thing that it seems like the sort of magic they would try to capture in a bottle twice, and it won't have worked.
There was one thing as they were talking about the Sentinels. There were a couple times where, as Trask is describing what he's creating, all I could think was, oh, this is exactly Project Insight from Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, essentially.
And
I mean, that's a thing. Precog has been a thing forever.
Yes.
What's it called? Minority Report, 2002.
Yep.
You know, that's a big movie based on a very good short story by Philip Dick. The Minority Report. Most every Philip Dick short story is good. Y'all should read some Philip Dick. If you've never read any Philip Dick, read some of his short stories. They're great. So yeah, that wasn't surprising to me. Precog, I can find where the baddies are and then kill them. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Fine.
I think maybe one of the reasons that irritated me a little bit, I don't know if I'd say irritated, but I don't know. It felt a little ham-fisted in a different way than it feels ham-fisted in Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Because it still is fairly ham-fisted in there. But there was just, and maybe it's my bias that I think Captain America and the Winter Soldier is one of the very best comic book movies that I've ever seen.
Sure.
But I don't know. There was just something about these that there were a few moments that just didn't work for me. I mean, there's a whole peace talk that Trask gives that I'm like, I hear the words you're saying, but they're not making any sense. Nothing that you're saying makes any sense.
Oh yeah, no, that was really flaccid. That whole section was really dumb. Yeah.
I also felt like, again, and we kind of hinted at this, but it felt like it just wrapped up too tidy for me. Like, you know, Wolverine waking up there in the X Mansion and basically everybody's there and everything's back to
They
normal.
even had Kelsey Grammer come back for a 10-second cameo as Real Beast.
Like, yeah, 3. I was like 3 to 4. I don't know.
He is there long enough for you to be like, oh damn, that's good. That's Fraser Crane.
So here's why I think I dislike this movie so much.
Oh, please, let's get to final thoughts here. I'm very curious to see why you felt so strongly about it, because like I said, I think it was more hits than misses. Still is kind of a mess. Like, why was Stryker there to do nothing?
And I agree that it is more hits than misses. Like I say, I am perfectly comfortable saying that I think that it is one of the very best made X-Men movies. And I can understand why it is ranked, its Rotten Tomatoes score is as high as it is. But I think the thing for me is this. This is an extremely bleak movie.
Oh, yeah.
And we all know I don't watch scary movies because I have enough stress in my life as it is, especially right now. And this movie is just, I think that this is what it is. I think it is too stressful for me. The whole time I'm watching it, it just feels like things are getting worse and worse and worse, and shit's falling apart more and more, and bad things are happening. And I don't like the humans were supposed to, again, they're kind of the enemy, but at the same time, I'm like, but they've got a point. And the mutants who are supposed to be our heroes are a bunch of irredeemable dicks for the most part, at certain points, at least in their existence. And I cannot get over Charles Xavier being a mind manipulating asshole all the time to everybody, everywhere.
Yep.
Like the amount of times he just blatantly violates people's, very existence with his mind is super, super fucked up.
Yep.
And Magneto, again, we've said this before, in a lot of ways, Magneto's right, but then they have to take him and turn him into such a mustache twirling, snidely whiplash caricature of a villain for no other reason than they weren't creative enough to come up with a better answer or something. I don't know. It just, it ends up making me mad because I'm like, and then the payoff for all this tension, you can give me tension for 2+ hours if you give me a satisfying payoff that is an appropriate denouement to this tension that I've been feeling. And Wolverine waking up in the X-Mansion is just a bullshit scene.
Honestly, they shouldn't have even had the flash forward.
No.
This is why, and this is maybe one of the biggest differences between this and the comic. In the comic Days of Future Past, which I recommend, it's one of Claremont's seminal stories from the 80s. It's really good. The biggest difference is it is Kitty Pryde who gets sent into her past body, not Wolverine. Kitty Pryde is your main character, which I think improvement. Jackman on his game, ruled in this movie.
Yep,
loved him.
totally.
Hamming it up. He was great. But Kitty Pryde's a better character. I like her better than Wolverine. My Wolverine is named Laura, and she has only 2 claws. Okay, that's neither here nor there. But in the end of that, they think they pull everything off. Kitty's future self goes back into her future self body. As you're the reader, you stay with the present day X-Men, and you have no idea whether it works or not. And that's where it ends, with them just hoping and praying that things turned out the way they were supposed to. And granted, years later, it gets messy, and it turns out that basically what that caused is a split in the timelines. So that terrible Days of Future Past future does still exist, but it's not the main timeline anymore. It becomes like a fractured offshoot timeline. Also, that's where Rachel Summers comes from, one of the best mutants, and she wasn't even in this movie. Granted, the movie was already too long.
Yeah. It
was too long. You couldn't have fit Rachel in there too, but I did miss Rachel Summers being in there. I just I like when Cyclops and Jean Grey have a daughter who gets turned into a bad guy and gets cool face tattoos, but then decides to be the good guy. That's all.
There you go. I mean,
who doesn't like that? Because you're wrong.
Sounds pretty cool to me.
Rachel Summers is great. She's the best. She is the best and most effective host of the Phoenix Force. She's been the host of the Phoenix Force 3 or 4 times. It shows up, she sucks it in, does some cool crap, throws it out again, and she's like, I'm back to who I was. It's fine. It's fine. Doesn't have to ruin my life like my mom.
Yeah.
She's cool. I really like Rachel Summers, so I'm sad that she's not in this movie, even though, again, how would you have even fit her in? So it's fine.
Well, like I say, I think that's why I did not enjoy this movie so much. I can't come up with anything else. I just know that when it was done, I was angry. I was angry that I had spent that time watching that movie, even though I recognized that it Like, I was more angry at the end of watching this movie than I was at the end of X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Interesting. I don't know that I could feel that much anger towards most movies, because that movie had me so mad.
No, that's okay. And like I say, that's why I was looking forward to talking about it, to see what your thoughts were, because it is, and I think it's that conflict where I look at it and I say, wow, this is better than a bunch of these X-Men movies that we've watched. But I did not enjoy watching it, and I do not want to watch it. I would not choose to watch it again.
That's fair.
And so, it was interesting. And again, our post-credit scene with Apocalypse, I might recommend that you watch that very, very brief scene before we watch X-Men Apocalypse, just to see how completely no clue whatsoever they had with when they decided they were going to do something with that character.
I mean, he didn't look like Ivan Ooze.
It's very interesting that was what they showed at the end, because it is like nothing like what we get in X-Men Apocalypse that I remember. But then again, I only saw that movie once back when it came out too, so who knows?
Interesting. And it's not like there was a big space between them. It came out in 2016.
Yeah, it was just a couple.
It was
years.
Directed by Singer. So
know.
they clearly just did not. They just.
I think they just said, we want to do
with
something with Apocalypse, but we don't know what we're doing, so let's just shit this stupid post-credit scene out.
I mean, I guess.
I don't know. I need to probably take a deep breath and calm down, because I'm feeling anxiety just talking about this movie, and I don't have a good explanation for it either. I think it's been, man, I'm not going to lie. Let me put into perspective how this week has been. I get up at 4 o'clock Tuesday morning, and this is just an example because every morning is the same. Get up at 4 o'clock. I go and I take my pre-workout. I got 150 milligrams of caffeine in there, and I make the scoop a little extra, so I got some more. I work out.
How much is 150 milligrams of caffeine?
I mean, a cup of coffee is like 80 to 90.
Oh, well, 150 is not. I drink double that every day. Come on.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Hear me out. So I go and I do that, and then I go down and I work out, and I come upstairs and I make sure boys are up getting ready to go to school and getting ready. And then I'm like, hey, I got to write, because this is when I got to write, and we'll talk about why we're writing later. But so then I sit down and do that, and I'm like, I am falling asleep, and it is freaking 6:45 in the morning. This is not a good sign. So then I go and I have to grab an energy drink that's got another 150 or 175 milligrams of caffeine in it. And I got to slam that puppy down just so that I can get out the door. I get my son to school. I go to work. I'm at work from, 8 until... I'm in clinics seeing a bunch of patients, and I have to go down and do a couple surgeries and stuff from 8 until at 5. Then I got to go down and I got to do a Facebook Live asking for a friend men's health seminar with a few other doctors. So I run down there and I do this Facebook Live thing until 6:15. And then at 6:15, I run home and I change out of my clothes that I wore for the Facebook Live thing, so that then I can run over to a friend's house, and with my group of friends, we can play Dungeons and Dragons. And I get there at like 6:40 at his house, and I go and I sit down to play, and I'm like, damn, I have had a protein shake and a small chocolate chip cookie today, and that is it.
Doc, you got to feed yourself better.
That's just what it's like these days. I can't. Oh, it's too much. So anyway, I think that's what life has been like these days. So watching a movie that was tense without a satisfying payoff, I think that's why it just pissed me the off. Oh, so mad.
I think that's extremely fair. That's extremely fair. See, for me, my life. Let me give you a scene into my life. I wake up. Alarm goes off at 5:45. I'm usually awake by then, because I usually wake up between 5:30, 5:45.
Sure.
Doom scroll Twitter for a few until the dogs can get out of bed. Usually let the dogs out around 6-ish or so. Have a leisurely morning. Enjoy my first large mug of coffee. I have a very... So... The thing that you don't realize until you become a coffee or tea drinker, which many of our listeners who are Mormon might not be, teacups just accumulate. And it's just a thing that happens. You don't know how, you don't know why, but you end up having like 15 to 20 teacups in your home. It's fine. We have 2 like trees of teacups that each have 6. I have my 6, Cassie has her 6, and there's still like 4 or 5 on the counter. Like, I don't know what's going on here.
That's impressive.
But the thing, and I have various and sundry very cute ones. I have a bunch of goofy Godzilla ones that have different things like about Godzilla. You know, one of them has Godzilla blowing his atomic fire and it says, "All hail our Lord and Savior." That's a winner. One of them says, "Oh Lord, he coming." So like with the big fat Godzilla, it's great. But the mug I use most frequently, because of its size, is a Golden Girls mug that is big enough to fit the equivalent of 2 normal cups of coffee in it. Like 2 normal mugs.
I love that.
So that is my primary like if that one's clean, I drink out of that one cuz I can fit twice as much in there. And just kind of like have it sit on my desk right in front of me between me and my keyboard, and I just let the beautiful smells waft up into my nose while I sip my coffee and I do my morning writing, and then I work literally from that exact same desk because I'm a work from home person, and I just switch computers. That's all I do is go from my personal computer to the work computer and then back if I don't have work to do because got to get them dailies done in Genshin somehow. And I hang out with my dogs and I let them outside and I work, and my wife comes home and we have dinner or lunch depending on what time she gets home, and I just chill, and then I go play Persona 5. So for me, movies is great.
Yeah.
We lead different lives. Our choices have led us to different places.
Yes, they have. And right now I'm rethinking many of my choices.
Let me tell you, nursing a big old cup of pumpkin spice coffee while you're checking your morning emails from your home office, it's pretty tight. It's pretty great.
Except we have talked about this before. I don't nurse any beverages. I drink with purpose. If it is because I'm thirsty,
I don't understand
then I'm going to just slam back as much cold water as I can. If it's because I need caffeine, it's how fast can I drink this down? I cannot do hot beverages because they make me drink them slowly. It's terrible. I can't do it.
And maybe this comes also with not being Mormon, because I used to be like you. I used to be like this. You know what? You can't drink that fast. Besides hot drinks, don't do that with alcoholic beverages, my friends.
That is why I have often told people, I'm like, it is a good thing I don't drink alcohol, because I would just, I would be the first one to get just absolutely smashed and hammered.
No, what would happen? I have thought about this because I've heard you say this, and I know that what would happen is that's not what would happen. What would happen is your method of alcohol consumption would exclusively be shots. And you wouldn't take too many of them because you'd space them out. You'd drink a glass of water in between each one. You'd recognize when you were feeling a little tipsy. You'd be like, I think I'd be done. But because of the way that you drink, I don't think that you would actually drink too much. I do think that your primary method of consumption would be, I would like a shot of bourbon. And you would down that shot of bourbon in one delicious gulp. And then you would wait a half an hour to an hour until you're feeling like a second. And then you would pour yourself a second.
There you go. You might be right. That might be what I did.
But for those of us who like to nurse, it's a beautiful life.
Well, I think that really what this tells me is I just need to start meditating. I need to find ways to soothe my mind, because clearly I'm getting worked up about things that are nowhere near important enough for me to be getting worked up about the way I am. So, You gotta calm down a little bit before we get to Andor, because that is a tense show and I need you to enjoy it. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I appreciate the warning. That might mean, quite honestly, that I have to wait until January at the earliest, because
that's sad but fair.
I will say And I think that we've talked about this in the past, but for me, October, November, and December are the absolute worst times of the year. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. It makes me angry. And it is because my life just goes to absolute shit. Because like I am right now scheduled out doing surgeries until like the 17th of December. And I guarantee you that I'm going to have at least 10 to 15 people between now and Thanksgiving who think they need to have surgery tomorrow. I had a guy today say to my PA, well, can't he just do this surgery? That's completely unnecessary. That doesn't need, that is a problem this person has had for a few years at the least. But said today, well, can he do my surgery tomorrow? And my PA said, well, no, we can't add you on tomorrow. It's not an emergency. And he goes, well, then he needs to do it on Saturday. And she was like, wait, what, Saturday? And he goes, well, I've had to work on Saturday before, so should he.
Dog, it doesn't matter whether you had to work on Saturday flipping burgers or doing whatever the hell you're doing. No, the hell out of here.
I do work on Saturday. I'm on call this Saturday. I'm going to work this Saturday. But you know what we don't do on Saturday? We don't do elective surgeries. And why do we not do elective surgeries? Well, because for every one patient who wants to have an elective surgery, I need myself, a pre-op nurse, a PACU nurse, an anesthesia provider, an anesthesiologist backing up that anesthetist, a scrub tech, a circulating OR nurse, and I need an anesthesia tech in the OR. So that one person who thinks that they need to have their surgery done on a, and this is the thing people don't understand, but for every one person who's going to have surgery, there is a minimum of 8 other people only in the perioperative arena who are required to take care of you. And so no, it's not just me. It's 7 other people. And I'm not going to do that to them just because.
Yeah.
And that's just what my life is like between now and the end of the year, because everybody thinks the fact that they've met their out of pocket for the year means that now their elective procedure becomes my emergency.
Ugh.
And if I sound like I'm angry and I'm bitter, it might be because I am. And I definitely don't act this way or really feel this way when I'm taking care of people. It's just when they start making demands when I'm not taking care of them that I get really, really unhappy.
Yeah.
So it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, it means that I really do. I get increasingly grumpy, increasingly it just gets really ugly between now and the end of the year. So, you know,
I bet. I'm sorry to hear that.
That's the way Andor is. It's good to know that I should probably get to a happy place first.
I will. Yes, I will say you should probably wait until January. And you know what? I can wait for you. I'll rewatch it in January and then we can talk about it.
I appreciate that. I truly do.
It's very good. I'm excited to talk about it with you at some point.
I'm looking forward to watching it. I just, like I say, I need to be in a place where mentally I can handle it. So
true enough.
All right. Well, let's wrap this thing up. Let's, I'll look forward to finding out what we're going to do in a couple weeks. And, we appreciate anybody who's listening, subscribed. Please, if you haven't, subscribe, share the podcast. Leave us a review, leave us a rating. Anything like that always helps, gets it out there, lets people know about it. And if you've got any feedback, reach out to us and let us know. feedback@themiddleofculture.com. And we'd be happy to address it down the road at a future episode. And until then, thanks again, everybody.
You too can prognosticate as to how Peter would drink his alcohol in the emails. Talk to you later, friends.